The following vodcast contains opinions from paid professionals. The information provided in this vodcast is general in nature and not advice. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Welcome to a three-time Group 1 Saturday edition of So We Think. Ben Way, of course, last weekend we previewed two Group 1s that we'll eventually get to see this weekend. If there's one thing we got right last week, it was that the rain was a-coming, and it did to Queensland heavily.
Yeah, it hit at the wrong time, didn't it? Hit at the wrong time, unfortunately. Did we run one race too many? Well, it's easy to say, but it kind of hit as they were making their way out of the track. And when they returned, the writing was on the wall. Anyone who was watching the coverage, I think, suspected that we were in a world of hurt. So we moved a race to Wednesday. We moved another race to Saturday. We'll discuss that a little bit later on about whether that should have happened or shouldn't have happened. But either way, we've ended up with a super Saturday.
We will preview those three Group 1s, the Kingsford Smith, the Queensland Oaks and the Queensland Derby, and also have a very insightful discussion with Queensland trainer David VanDyke, who saddles up Philia in the Oaks this weekend. And if you haven't heard David's story before, it truly is one to listen for. Don't move anywhere. You're going to want to stick around for that. Before we get to David, though, just a few little news bites. So Ying Rising has been confirmed, finally confirmed for the Everest. He will race in the ATC slot. So the Hong Kong Jockey Club have leased that slot off the Australian Turf Club. And I can understand why. It's two big powerhouse turf clubs from across the world merging together and working together. And I guess that means that there's no real commercial issues for the team of Ying Rising going forward into the Everest. But it's exciting that he is confirmed to come and he'll have two starts in Sydney.
Conceptually, if we didn't know it already, how successful has the Everest been to bring those two clubs together to pair with a horse, essentially, in Ying Rising that we're bringing from overseas with a Australian trainer, bringing over here to run, is our favourite in the race when all we do is talk about how our sprinters are better than everywhere else. This is what it was designed to be, and it is delivered on every front.
So he's $1.90 at the moment.
He could be shorter.
He's definitely going to be shorter, 100%. Especially with the world pool. And now they'll be wheeling and dealing as to how that all works, because that's a really important part of Everest Day now.
All I would be saying is if Ying Rising is in the race on race day and you can get $1.90, $2 fixed, and you're considering taking your luck on the tote,
don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
They love favourites. They love Ying Rising, and they love their own.
Yeah. So price prediction there, I would say, I reckon he'll be like $1.30 on the tote.
Nah, too short.
You reckon?
I
reckon he'll start that short.
Well, I'll have another bet. I feel as though we'll talk about the Bazasto bet later on, but we'll have another bet.
You reckon longer than that?
No, longer than that.
You think?
Yeah, they can't turn it off.
Mate.
No. Hey, the shin pad's out for a while.
Yeah, he's got deep bone bruising to his foot and ankle from a barrier trial incident in Victoria, which is really unfortunate for Blake, because he had been working incredibly hard to win the Melbourne Metro Premiership, and he was charging ahead in the Victorian Premiership too, and they were big, lofty goals for him this year. It wasn't necessarily about how many Group 1s he could win, but about really solidifying his spot in that Melbourne jockeys room after returning from Hong Kong. And it took him, let's be honest, it took him a year or two to really iron out a few things in his game to get to the top of the mountain, the peak of his powers again. And now he's done that beautifully. So that would be a very painful injury, and there's not much you can do about it. Like, you just got to sit and wait for it to heal and not feel so awful.
Yeah, a couple of his rivals are heading north, so that kind of helps.
Craig Williams.
Yeah.
He was there on Wednesday as well, which was good to see. And then the other bit of news that I wanted to bring up was Via Sistine. I heard this yesterday. So she is a possibility of heading to Hong Kong for their big international day later in the year, after most likely competing in the Cox Plate. Cox Plate, little letter, Hong Kong, or Cox Plate into a Champions race, a stakes at Flemington? What would you prefer?
I'd always prefer her to stay here.
Would you?
Yeah.
You don't want to show her off to the rest of the world?
She's from the rest of the world.
Yeah, but she's
been elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, but she's the better, more improved version of herself right here,
Would
right
that
now.
be the end of her? if she went over there.
Well, then it's a long time to the start of the breeding season. She's got another 6-7 months.
So an autumn.
I think so.
An autumn then out.
I think we're going to be fortunate enough to see her during the spring and then the autumn, and then time will be called.
Okay.
Do you agree?
Yeah, fine. Send her overseas.
Yeah.
I'm fine with whatever. Do
She'll
whatever.
be right. Now it's time to chat to our very special guest for today, and this discussion does feature some very heavy topics. Remember, help is available. You can call Lifeline on 13 11 14 and speak with someone today. David VanDyke has the favourite in the Oaks on the weekend in Philia. She has won 4 on the bounce this preparation. Of course, David has won 4 Group 1s and had some particularly amazing fillies. I think Yankee Rose sticks in my mind. Obviously, she ran second in a Golden Slipper. And then she's been this amazing producer over in Japan as well. We'll talk about her and, of course, Alligator Blood, who was a sensation up in Queensland for a time too. But I wonder how the nervous energy is playing on David's mind. Welcome to So We Think, David.
Thank you. Yes, it's certainly there at the moment.
How do you go about handling that sort of thing, mate? Because it isn't easy, and sitting there staring at a horse isn't going to fix anything. So how do you spend the next 48 hours or so preparing yourself?
Yes, well, quite the contrary of staring at her. I actually leave her alone a bit more than I normally would. I've done most of the work now. She's had a work under saddle. I've got good staff around her. The strapper will hardly leave her side now, and she'll just have a nice swim in the morning, and then I'll look forward to going to the races and seeing her there. But for myself, I'll finish this discussion and then I'll go to the gym and have a swim. I'll just make sure that I'm focusing on other tasks I've got in the way of, the other 54 horses I've got, get the worksheets done, reports, and really sort of try and just focus my attention in other areas, because I can overthink things and I just want to give the horse and the road to the Oaks every opportunity without having to play it too many times in my head.
That is remarkable self-awareness, because I think there's a lot of people who would stew on things, or they might not even feel the nervous energy. They might be like, well, my job's done. I think that's remarkable self-awareness, because I think there's a lot of people, whether they're athletes or trainers, who would either let that energy fester in a negative way, or to the contrary, some people are like, well, my job's done. Can't do anything about it. Got to just move on with the world. So you're in the middle, but very, very good at managing the way that you deal with things over the next 48 hours.
Yes, look, I don't want to lose the opportunity and the excitement building up to this race. I like to keep myself mentally and physically fit. I remember when we were going into the Australian Guineas with Alligator Blood and the CSAs, and Ryan Maloney and I would be at hot Pilates, and then we'd go and have a swim together. And, even the strapper was joining us, Emma Lehman, and we really sort of embraced that time. We didn't waste a day. We made sure that we were in the best shape at the same time as getting the horse there too. So I think I don't want to fall into the trap of seeing this as a means to an end. I want to be able to just go through this process. When it's all over, the phone stops ringing and we're all back to normality. But I think riding the wave into these big races is really a part of the excitement of the journey.
You talk about your other horses. Is there a chance you could end up with 2 in the Oaks at this stage?
Well, Misting's first emergency, and as you know, people don't like to pull out of Group 1 races. So I'd love to see her get a run. She'll probably get back in the field. She should be running on, and, the dream for her would be to run top 3.
Back to Philia, we know that she is a star filly. What she's done this preparation is really nothing short of remarkable, from a maiden to winning a Group 2 in the Roses last start and in really stunning style, and now going into a Queensland Oaks as the favourite. We're not the show necessarily to dive a lot into the nitty-gritty of how the race will unfold, but you have drawn Sticky. Her natural pattern seems to be right there on speed. Is that what Kieran will try to do on the weekend?
I'm going to try and minimise the amount of discussion I have with Kieran. He's obviously a master tactician over a distance. It was interesting that in the Roses, the fastest furlong of the race was between the 1800 and the mile. And when he went past me the first time and they were leaving the straight, I saw he had her off the bit and he was letting her roll. And to my mind, I was thinking, oh, gee, he's going a bit quick here. But I spoke to him at length after the event and I said, do you go on time or do you go on feel? And he said, in the races like the Roses, he said, I was going on feel. He said, I knew what I had. I knew she was doing it comfortably. I had a look across. I saw who was taking me on and I knew that I didn't have to give up the lead. So, having him riding and knowing the opposition and knowing the horse he's under, I want him to have as less of my thoughts in his head as possible.
So far, you're leaving the horse alone, you're leaving the jockey alone.
I love it.
I'm wondering whether he's returning half the training, prize money if this horse happens to salute. I want to ask you, I guess, about you holistically, David. If you happen to win on the weekend, how important is this to you to sort of have another headline horse and to have another marquee win as a trainer and sort of have your name up in lights once again?
Well, as a recovering addict, I've got to be a bit careful about attaching my ego to these type of events. I don't drink, and I like to keep things as simple as possible, and that's what works for me. If I'm getting up Sunday morning, which I will at 1 a.m. and going to the stables at 2, then that's part of, in my mind, that's part of the joy and the success that I'm having. It's not so much the result Saturday, but how I manage my life past that point. So for me, I don't want the result of Saturday to affect me and my life too much moving forward.
I really respect that resolve because I don't think most people have it. And maybe it's a skill, it sounds by that, it's a skill that you've had to learn over the years. But do you feel as though you sort of have to give away some of the joy to keep some of the consistency and essentially remove those aspects of your life that became horrifically detrimental at periods of it?
That's a good question. And yes, look, I may have given away some joy, but I've replaced it with peace because joy can come and go, and it does. It's cyclical. But peace is something we can work towards and we can hang on indefinitely. And I think, even the Buddhist doctrine sort of shows us that to be at peace and be at one and live in the moment is the most powerful place we can be. It's not holding up a Group 1 trophy. Sure, that's fantastic, and I get a lot of excitement and joy, and it helps my staff, my business, those around me. But to have an underlying level of peace is what I strive towards, not so much glory on the track.
You are a remarkable story, David. And for those who don't know your history, you mentioned it yourself, a history with alcohol, with drugs, with mental health battles as well, many years ago. And as such, you have moved forward in such an honourable way to create your own business and be incredibly successful. If your life were to become a book, what is the chapter that brings you most joy? And what's the chapter in it, I guess, that brings you most pain?
Probably the most joy would be to be in right relationship with everyone, including my higher power, those around me, nature, the horses, just to be at one with everything around me and be at that level of peace. And probably the worst part would be the flip side of that when I was acting out in addiction, I was isolated from everyone and everything around me. I was living in constant pain. I was medicating it, but the more I medicated, the more the medication didn't work. And, I got to a point there where I just jumped in the car, put the hose on the back and thought, well, let's just end it all now. I need to escape from myself. And fortunately, at that point, I had, it was in the middle of the bush, and I had a chap walking his dog down this track that no one would ever normally go. And he's seen me minutes away from death, pull me out of the car, and I'm still here. So, my life was saved. And what was it saved for? Now I had to, past that point, I had to find a place that I didn't think I could get to, and that's here training horses and working on my peace, and call it sanity, call it joy, but it really is right connection.
Do you have any association with that fella out of interest since that moment?
I don't even know who it was.
Oh.
Wow.
It's quite bizarre, I mean, if you were walking down a track and you saw someone in a car with it running, who would go over and open the car and look at the person in there and go down that path of action? If it was kids or a lady, I'm sure they wouldn't put themselves in that vulnerable position. They'd probably ring the police. And of course, that would have been too late because I'd already passed out and I was minutes away. So it was really, in my mind, a higher power moment. And I had to think, what am I really here for if I'm getting saved from that?
Well, I think you're really here for the connection with the horse, and it's something that you've had from a really young age. I tend to ask this question a lot to our guests, Ben, and it's, what do you love about the horse? Because I think David is one of the most connected and intuitive trainers out there. Like you connect with horses almost in a way better than some people.
I definitely connect better with horses than I do with people, and that's probably, one of my saving graces, because I'm just fascinated with the way horses can be so accepting of us, and how, they're 500 kilos and just the way they think and their patience and their ability to just live in the moment, yet they allow us to connect with them and be a part of their journey. And, each morning I'm the first one at the stable. I take one down to swim, and, it might be a cold morning, the water's freezing, and guess what? They still walk in the water and have a swim and do what I ask them to do. And it just continues to fascinate me the way they respond to what we want them to do.
Just on core responses, I mean, everyone talks about fight or flight, and horses are often attributed as that flight animal. And yet they are remarkably tractable and trainable, and yet they do show great fight when they're sort of put in that position, as we see in our sport. Like, you have some that literally lift themselves beyond what they're comfortably doing to do it. It's a strange anomaly, isn't it, David, that they're sort of categorised as a flight animal, and yet they have that nurturing aspect to them, and they have that competitive aspect to them as well.
Yes, well, it's obviously something they're born with, the desire. This is most of them, some don't, but the desire to compete, the desire. I mean, they don't get anything. I mean, if she wins the Oaks, what can I give her? A pat, and, she gets all the feed she wants anyway. So, especially with a horse like Philia, because she was, and I shared this with Emma after the Roses, she is a hard horse to train. She doesn't just go out there and do what we want her to do. She'll get out there, she'll run backwards, she'll go sideways, she'll dig her toes in, and it's not an easy path to get her to the point where she's competitive. And indeed, last prep, when she had those 2 seconds, it wasn't a matter of me training her to win. It was a matter of me just getting her to the races and having her go around safe and just have that experience. And indeed, I think she had a warning on her for not going to the barriers for her first or second start, which was just very common. That's just the mindset she had. And after the Princess Stakes, she had she was very anxious that day. She sweated a lot. We were struggling with her. And after that, we went to the races a few times without running. And she had the good experience of winning that day. Then she went to the races and thought, hey, I don't have to compete. Then we got her to the Roses and she was a different horse. She knew what she was, she knew it was safe there. She didn't know whether she was going to run or not. But when we did saddle her up and take her in the enclosure, it did my heart and soul so much good to see she wanted to be there. She was ready. And we saw that when the gates opened. She just rolled, she went forward. As Kieran said, I just felt her, she was comfortable. She was wanting to do it. And irrespective of what happens in the Oaks, it's just, for me personally, been such a enriching journey to see the way she was last prep to this point in time where she is keen to be an athlete.
I have the utmost respect for you, David. I really do. The way that you look at your life and the life of a horse and your job and the job of the horse is really, I find it really inspiring. Really, really inspiring.
So do I. And you don't hear many people speak that openly about their weaknesses and convictions either. I do want to pick your brain quickly on Alligator Blood. I think if people were to sum up David's career when he finishes, this will be one of the first horses that are mentioned. How do you reflect upon your Alligator Blood time, mate?
Oh, look, it was a magic time in my life. We got him from before he started racing, and indeed, we took him to Rose Hill one day from Queensland, and we got him to the races, and he was quite cantankerous. He was rearing up, and he was throwing his front feet at us. And I went to the stewards and said, look, can I scratch him? And Ryan Maloney had flown down to Sydney to ride him. And I said, he's just not here to compete. He's quite agitated. And to the credit of the Sydney stewards, they allowed us to scratch him. I took him back to the sunny coast. We then put him in the weakest race I could find, a Class 3 plate, I think it was, at the sunny coast. He won that convincingly. And then I took him to Melbourne and he won the Caulfield Guineas Prelude and went on from there. So I get a lot of satisfaction out of seeing a horse that I helped groom up, and we did win a Group 1 with him, but to groom up for future success. So even when he was winning with Gay, I'm thinking, oh, that's my boy, it's like having a child and they grow up and they leave home and you want them to have success and you watch them and you mightn't be connected to them directly, but you've been an important part of their life. And that's how I saw Alligator Blood. And, I still love him, and it was great that he did so well.
Do you want to quickly touch on Yankee Rose as well and the progeny? Yeah. Because that legacy lives on.
Well, yeah. I mean, it did live on with Liberty Island, the really good filly who sadly has passed away recently. But you would have been ecstatic to see her throw such incredible progeny over there, and for a time, one of the world's best.
It's amazing because I think the longer I'm in the game, the less I think I know. I remember when she came into my stable as a 2-year-old and she was standing in the back corner of the box. She's tucked up, she was light, and she only cost $10,000 at the sales. And I'm looking at her and I thought, oh, well, let's just hope I can win a maiden at Mudgee with you. That's what was going through my head at the time. And then fast forward, she's second in the Slipper to Capitalist, won the Sires, first female horse to win the Champion Stakes Group 1 level, and then third to Winx in the Cox Plate, all in 1 year. So to go from that, where she was as a baby to that point, was amazing. Now, when she was sold for big money, because wasn't a blue blood. She's by all American, who's an average stallion at best. And I thought, she's only tiny, and I thought, oh, well, you're a bit of a freak. I doubt you'll throw anything. So to see Liberty Island, one of the best horses in the world, second in the Japan Cup to a champion, just blew me away. And, I remember when Yankee Rose was running, I went to the Easter sale and they're paying $1 million for this and $1 million for that. And I'm thinking all these people are trying to buy what I've got at home, a Yankee Rose, and none of these horses look like her. So it's amazing the longer I'm in this game.
She had that little something that so few of them have, by the sounds of things. David, we haven't had much to do with each other over the journey as yet. I hope that changes down the track. But I'll just say I've gone from not knowing a stack about you to absolutely cheering for you this weekend. I can't wait to see how you go.
Oh, thanks to both of you. Are you coming up, Emma?
I am, David. I'll see you there on Saturday. And if there's a really sentimental play in the Oaks, it is for you because, as I mentioned, we've spoken on a number of occasions about David's story, but this filly sounds like it would be the ultimate trading performance with how difficult she has been. Yeah. It's a testament to you as a trainer if you can get her to win a Group 1 on Saturday. Best wishes.
Oh, lovely. Well, I'm glad you'll be there. Thank you both.
If you or someone you know needs help, please call Lifeline anytime on 13 11 14 or Men's Line Australia on 1300 789 978.
David VanDyke there, who is just an incredible person. And one day there'll be a book or there'll be a movie because what he endured in his younger years is nothing short of horrific. And to get yourself back on track and stay on track for a considerable period of time, in excess of 25 years, is just... And then, to train horses like Yankee Rose and Alligator Blood and now this filly, she could be anything. Yeah,
and it's important that those things don't define you, but they can change you, and he certainly talked about that there, which was absolutely lovely. So the Queensland Oaks... we've got his filly, who's going to be tough to beat. We've got Benadryl. We've got Moving Outs. There are others, I think, that are going to be difficult to beat in the race.
Yeah.
Jenny, for one, who do you like?
My each-way plays in the race would be Churchill's Choice and Yu Wang. And we mentioned them when they were running in the Roses a couple of weeks ago. The way that they both hit the line in the Roses indicated to me that the 2,200 metres is not going to be an issue. I think when it comes to Derbies and Oakses at this time of year, you're balancing up where the horses are going to hit a peak
or past it,
or they're past it, because a lot of these fillies and a lot of these geldings and colts in the Derby, they have been up and running for a really long time. Some of the entries in the Derby, we speak of the King of Thunder, and we'll touch on that in a minute. He's looking at his third Derby.
Yeah.
He might be best placed to win this Derby, and he might have had the best preparation to do that this time around. But you've just got to be wary that some of these fillies, they might be, as we say, over the top. I don't think Churchill's Choice is. I think she would be my each-way play for Nathan Doyle. But how can you not cheer for David?
Yeah.
And for that filly? And what has she done? This preparation is, maiden to a 3-year-old handicap, to a listed race, to a Group 2, to a Group 1.
And making her own luck in
100%. And doing
most of those.
Amazing fashion.
Yeah. In the lead up to the Roses, I said, I think the Australasian Oaks form will stand up. We got zero guide. Bar her maybe saying, hey, I'm pretty good. The rest, most of them didn't get into the race. There was talk of kickback. You're getting stuff flicked in your face. You're not going to run particularly well, are you? So, do I think they've tipped over the edge off that run, or do I think they just never got into it? Benadryl's one I just can't discount yet. Jenny's Meadow is probably, if someone said have an each-way bet for your life in the race, it would be Jenny.
Yeah, Benadryl's the interesting one. You're right, because she had excuses in the Roses. There's no doubting that. There were definitely things that didn't go her way. But to come back from that now and to hit another peak.
It feels a big ask.
It does feel like a tough thing to do. So the Derby, of course, last Saturday we were meant to have Derby Day and Kingsford Smith Day, but the rain, it just tumbled at Eagle Farm, and as such the jockeys complained of visibility issues. Nothing wrong with the track, so to speak, but problems in seeing where they were, especially if you were back in the ruck.
You were there.
I was there. I mean, they were coming back covered in mud. And I know
covered in mud. One of Willow's post-race interviews was very funny.
Yeah, well, he had the shield, and the goggles, and I've heard, there's been a lot of commentary this week as to whether the visibility issue is a new one in racing. Like, we haven't had that for probably in excess of 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, but safety protocols have increased too. Like, there are a lot of things that didn't used to be the case that are now, and they are now for a reason.
Yeah.
I always lean towards just trusting the jockeys in that instance. They're racing for huge prize money. There are opportunities there. Yes, maybe some are thinking, oh, my horse probably won't enjoy those conditions. I'd rather head home. Some. But others would be equally like, hell no. These are my ideal situation. This is my ideal situation for my horse, but it feels unsafe, so I don't want to do it. You have to trust the jockeys who do it day in, day out, and they want to be racing.
I know. They want to be there. So the Derby then, now that we're not going to be on a heavy 10, I'm about to realign my thoughts a little bit for these next two Group 1 races. I do still think, though, that Belle de Tel, she had a minor issue last week. She was slightly lame, so she's come out of that fine. Deep focus for Paul Shaler. I've still got my eye on him for some reason. I still keep coming back to him. And Michael
Statuario anywhere in your...
Lavalier. I worry about... Statuario is one of those ones that I'm worried about maybe being...
Over the edge. Okay.
But I'm not to know. You'd have to be able to sit there with the trainer and really dissect it. But there's a few there, like even Philip Stokes this week has said that he worries that Feminale is over the top. He worries that the week delay has maybe pushed her over.
Hey, not to go back too far, but just to the Oaks, your cousin's horse.
Yeah, well, he's got two.
Yeah, so the one that won with the jetpack on board in Sydney the other week.
She needs it really wet, I think.
Really wet.
Yeah, I think she needs it bottomless. We're talking about Let's Fly, who won a race at Randwick 2 weeks ago. They paid the late entry fee. Though the late entry fee for this Oaks wasn't exorbitant. It wasn't like, 50,000.
You're right. Well, I'm glad it wasn't, because he had to ask DS for some of it. Good luck getting that.
Yeah, so they've paid the late entry fee. She would want the rain to fall very well. And then they've got Pleasure Artist as well, who had a Victoria 3-year-old campaign last spring, and she will get the trip, there's no doubting that, over the 2,200 metres. And they have got CJ Graham booked to ride, and she's looking for her first Group 1 victory. So there's a few stories to unfold, hopefully, on the weekend. We're still touting the Chris Waller, breaks his own record.
Well, I'm just glad he got a winner the other day. Because it was starting to build, wasn't it? What did he get to, 80?
80 starters without a winner, although that was only 11 days.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a real
I think I said
drought.
to you, oh, geez, he's got to 76 without a win. And you said, that's like a week.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was.
And it was a week and a half.
Yeah.
But yeah. Hey, what happened with, you mentioned Godolphin's galloper there in the Derby?
Lavalier.
Yeah. What's happened with Jamie for the Kingsford Smith?
She is in Bali. So I saw the news about Benedetta this morning. This is for the Kingsford Smith we'll move on to now. Of course, she was booked to ride Benedetta. And I saw that Tim Clark has been now booked to ride her in that race. And I texted her straight away and I said, what's happened? And she goes, what do you mean, what's happened? So she didn't know, but she is in Bali. And I think she was waiting to see whether they would run her in the Kingsford Smith or they would hold off for the Stradbroke.
Right.
Yeah.
So she would have been on board for the Straddy, no doubt.
Yeah.
But she was skipping this week. Okay. So it's the move of this race from last week to this week that stitched her up. But it's presented Tim with a great opportunity, I guess. She spoke so much about her love of that horse. That's why I found it so jarring when I heard the news. And
it was interesting that you're right. Like, she was meant to ride Lavalier in the Derby, and instant on, when we're getting our papers yesterday that Kieran McAvoy's booked. So maybe Jason Warren and the team just weren't 100% sold on what they were going to do with Benedetta, whether they were going to run this week or next week. And that probably does lead us to the Kingsford Smith for one final Group 1 discussion for the week. So we've got a 1,300 metre and 1350 Group 1 on Saturday, postponed from last weekend. And then we've got the 1,400 metre Stradbroke the week after. And it does pose the question...
Should it have been on Wednesday?
Well, that's what you wanted to say.
It should have been on Wednesday.
Okay.
No. I think it depends on what you prioritise. So clearly having the Group 1 races on a Saturday, turnover will be higher.
Yeah.
Right? But is that the preference? And really that should be the number one priority.
The Stratty?
No, turnover.
Oh, turnover. Yeah.
Turnover should be the priority.
Yeah,
That's what funds the whole
Correct.
thing. So you have the best races on a Saturday.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that it's thrown preparations out. And you're now seeing horses having to, A, run a week later than they'd planned, but B, have a quick backup on rain-affected ground into a difficult Group 1 in the Stradbroke the week after. So many, including many of the top hopes, are now bypassing one or the other.
Yes.
They're either saying, skipping the Kingsford Smith to go to the Stradbroke. Now, they ran the Fred Best on Wednesday, which is a win and you're in. So, and we discussed that. That's probably why they put that one on the Wednesday.
Should they have put both 1350 races on the Wednesday?
Well, would the turnover from Saturday have dropped significantly with the absence of the Kingsford Smith? To my eye, it would hold up well enough there.
That's a good point.
I think. And their counter-argument could be, well, will the turnover for the Stradbroke drop if all of those good horses don't end up there? Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe people would still bet into the Stratty. But I've had a look at the Stradbroke and it's really fallen away. Every Stradbroke's a good Stradbroke, but it's... Let's run through them.
Go for it. Where's your market?
So, well, you can get the market
I'll
up.
get the market up for you.
But in terms of who's going to go there, Private Eye will go there because they're skipping the...
Correct.
Right?
They're skipping the Kingsford Smith to solely focus on the Stratty.
Giga Kick.
This internet in this joint.
Giga Kick.
Won't back up.
Won't back up. Jolly Star.
Doubtful to back up.
Okay. Our favourite, War Machine.
He's got to be...
He's there.
Yeah, he's there and he's firming.
So he's $3.
Yep.
He could be $2.
Yep.
With all of them disappearing. Your
On the
second
up, no
favourite's going
way.
to be Komachi. This is off the top of my head.
Yes.
But more than likely Komachi. So
then you're looking at Komachi, if this is the way the market sees it. So it's War Machine at $3, Jolly Star at $11, but doubtful. Like she's not going to back up. Komachi, who runs in the Kingsford Smith, Rise at Dawn, who runs in the Kingsford Smith. So you're pending on them backing up.
So your War Machine, Komachi, Rise at Dawn so far.
Yep.
Is at the head of your market.
Private Eye,
Yep, we'll be there.
Angel Capital,
Yeah.
who got scratched last week because of the wet ground. Bazusto, who now we're off.
Oh, hang on. hang on. Well, that's a good point. Did I win? Technically, I didn't win the bet.
Well, look, I had him
To run top three.
to run top three on a
In a Group 1.
bottomless track
In a Group 1.
in a Group 1.
As it turns out, he's run a lamentable fifth
On a
or sixth.
Firmadeck.
On a Firmadeck in a Group 3.
Yes, but it's weights and measures.
Off the back of that, is he up to Group 1 level or is he a couple of lengths off them?
I'd need to see it bottomless.
Okay. Well, you're not going to.
Giga Kick, $21. He's not going to go do the backup. Doubtful.
Yeah.
Payline,
Anyway,
Robusto.
the point of it isn't to sit here and slam
No.
the Stradbroke because we've mentioned a few times there have been some Stradbrokes where you think, oh, is this a weak year?
Every year.
But then you look back and you go, well, this Steffi, did that look like a bit of a ho-hum Group 1? Yeah, maybe. Look what she's done since.
She's won one race before the Stradbroke last year, the Maiden at Orange.
So it can be the birthplace of a superstar, and
Yes.
you reflect and you go, that must have been a good
yeah.
addition, right? So I'm not going to hate on it. I think you do that maybe 2-3 years down the track where you say, oh, that was a lamentable addition of the Stradbroke.
But you
one
think
thing
it could have been avoided?
I think it could have been stronger had they run on the Wednesday, and I don't think you would have lost a lot from a meeting turnover standpoint, given the good racing you've got on Saturday anyway.
Okay, that's interesting. So in the Kingsford Smith on a firmer deck this weekend, where are we looking? What's your headline? Is it Jolly Star? Now it's billed as almost a match race between Giga Kick and Jolly Star.
Benedetta.
And Benedetta.
Suddenly it's not a match race.
Well, I think
I was with Benedetta and I'll stay in that camp.
Okay.
Yeah. Who do you like?
Jolie Star's the class. Benedetta looks amazing. Giga Kick, I'd prefer him to be third up.
Okay.
But they're the three. There's a few here that you could probably... Democracy Manifest is going to get over further. I'd love to see what he does into this preparation, maybe second up, over a little bit further than the 1,300. Payline was epic, hitting the line in the 10,000. Yeah.
To me, they're in the Basasto camp of a few lengths off the good ones.
I love that as now a theme.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is really cruel on Basasto.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Well, after this weekend, we'll be looking towards Stradbroke Day. Are you venturing up north? Because I know you usually go and host a luncheon.
I'm hosting the same luncheon.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. But I'm not staying for Straddy Day. I'm coming back. I have commitments here, hosting on Saturday, so I'll head up and back same day for lunch. But yeah, First Light Racing have been good to me, having the occasional luncheon on, and I only do it for the free lunch.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Whatever. I think I reflect upon today's episode fondly because of the open and honest discussion with David VanDyke. And that's one I'll remember for a long time.
The undoubted highlight by a mile.
Yep. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week on So We Think.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.